Hi there. So, in case you didn't know, I personally I'm Canadian, and th- even though I don't talk about Canadian politics a lot, the reason I don't talk about Canadian politics a lot in this channel is because talking about Canadian politics you don't get a lot of views. So I've decided I'm going to talk about American politics. It's effectively an American politics channel. Talking about American politics is more lucrative. That said, we got an issue. There's an issue happening here in Canada I need to discuss, and it's Canada's issue with Ukrainian neo Nazis. Now, our government, they our government led by Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, they're supporting the war in Ukraine. They're supporting NATO. So I'm just going to read from the government website what the policies that our government has enacted in Ukraine. Canada, here's a list of what they've been doing. Impose new sanctions against Russia, including new prohibitions on direct and indirect dealings in Russian sovereign debt. 2. Send additional military contributions to support NATO through Operation Reassurance, including up to an additional 460 personnel to the approximately 800 currently deployed in Europe in support of NATO. And 3. Authorize approximately 3,400 Canadian Armed Forces personnel across all branches of the service to deploy to the NATO response force should they be required by NATO. Yeah, so they're supporting the Ukraine. They're supporting NATO during the conflict, and what do you know? They've also supported Azov Battalion neo Nazis. So there's a report. Here's a report I'd like to show you from a certain newspaper here in Canada. It says. It basically says that there were Canadian officials in the armed forces who met with Azov Battalion neo-Nazis and they tried to hide it. It's in the Ottawa Citizen. Yeah, read part of it. The Canadians met and were briefed by leaders from the Azov Battalion in June 2018. The officers and diplomats did not object to the meeting and instead allowed themselves to be photographed with battalion officials despite previous warnings that the unit saw itself as pro-Nazi. The Azov Battalion then used these photos for its online propaganda, pointing out the Canadian delegation expressed hopes for further fruitful cooperation. After a journalist asked the Canadian Forces about the Azov social media postings, officers scrambled to come up with a response according to documents obtained by this newspaper through access to information law. Lieutenant Colonel Fraser Old, commander of Canada's Joint Task Force Ukraine, warned that a news article might soon be published and could result in questions being asked inside the Canadian government about why such a meeting took place. So they know they met with Azov Battalion neo-Nazis. They know they're guilty about it, and they didn't want to talk to mainstream news sources about the matter. And the thing is, our media, they all support Ukraine. They all think you have to support Ukraine, or else you're a Russian propagandist. That's the whole line that people in the media will bring up. Politicians will bring up. So there are certain politicians who have relatives in our government who were neo Nazis. But what they'll say and what people in the media will say is that if you question this stuff, if you call them out for being neo Nazis, you're a Russian agent. It's McCarthyism is what it is. So we need to speak out against this sort of. Here in Canada, here in the United States, and leftists around the world, they need to speak out against supporting sanctions on Ukraine. They need to speak out against war in Ukraine, and they need to speak out against supporting Azov Battalion neo-Nazis. So there you have it.